Hello, I'm Lucy Reid and I'm a WO2 within the Royal Engineers.
Hello, I'm Kaylee and I'm a Lance Corporal.
Hello, I'm Jade Murray. I'm a Sapper within the Royal Engineers.
Hello, I'm Rachel Bradley. I'm a Sapper in the Royal Engineers.
I'm a trained plant operator mechanic.
I'm trained as a driver in the Royal Engineers.
I'm a trained geographical technician, but I'm also qualified as a combat engineer.
This means that I've learnt to handle explosives, build bridges, purify water and much more.
I decided to go for engineers because I worked within a construction environment anyway in my civilian job, so I just thought that was the best route for me.
The best part for me was definitely when I was awarded my stable belt after I completed combat engineering training.
As part of my training to become a geographical technician, we do a degree in military geospatial science. This was a huge attraction for me because it provided me with a highly sought after qualification and transferable skills that I can use after my military career. The best part of my job would definitely be seeing how useful the products we create are across the whole army and at all levels of command.
It's changed my life in terms of the confidence that I now have. I can walk into most situations and be absolutely comfortable with it.
Would I do it all again? Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Peter Rowell and welcome you to this webinar today in my dual roles as a Brigadier commanding the Royal School of Military Engineering Group and as the champion for the Sapper Servicewomen's Network. The RSME Group is part of the Land Warfare Centre, and it is great to hear that people from across the Land Warfare Centre and indeed the Defence College of Technical Training have joined us today. The Sapper Servicewomen's Network are an excellent support network for women in the Royal Engineers, and I am honoured to be their champion, amplifying their voices and supporting their work. The theme for this, the 7th International Women in Engineering Day, is Shaping the World, which is very fitting. And I am looking forward to hearing from Emma Fitzgerald and how she has shaped the world. I know Emma will be too modest to say that herself, but I think you will agree that she has indeed done just that. And I know so many women who have shaped the world, many of whom will be on this webinar. I hope today is an excellent celebration of those achievements and an inspiration to continue shaping the world. Now, it would be naive of us to think that these achievements have all been plain sailing. The triumphs are, in my opinion, all the greater because of the adversity and setbacks. The lessons you will hear are hard won. Today, however, is not the time to dwell on the work that we still need to do to make our teams, units, army and defence a fairer and more welcoming workplace for women. This is very important and ongoing work, which I'm determined to help with in whatever way that I can. It is the responsibility of the chain of command to change the organisation, not the women in it. Women will play a vital part, and I believe it is fundamental that your voices are heard more clearly. Today is about recognising that the most important confidence is the confidence to be yourself, to be a role model from where you are. You do not have to be a role model to everyone. Just encouraging one other person makes a hugely positive difference.
Hello.
So I hope you join listening to what our speakers have to say.
It's starting to click up. It's coming in.
How you can confidently make a difference.
Yeah, they're coming in.
I see we've got someone joining us as well. So grateful if we could just mute the mics and then we'll be able to get on with the speakers.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So without further ado, let me introduce our speakers. First up is Emma Fitzgerald, our keynote speaker. Emma is the Regional Director with AECOM, a global engineering consultancy, and she is the Defence Sector Framework Lead for the whole of the UK. She is a chartered civil engineer and accredited project manager. Her day-to-day role involves framework management with various government organisations to deliver infrastructure projects that support the armed forces in the UK. Interestingly, in 2018, she was awarded the Best Women Consultant by the European Women in Construction and Engineering Awards, which I'm sure she will expand on. You will then hear from Major Vicki Warrington. Vicki has served in the Royal Engineers for 19 years, covering all aspects of military engineering. She is the co-chair of the Sapper Servicewomen's Network and happens to be married to another serving Royal Engineer officer, and they have two very lively little boys. So thank you both for giving up your time. Emma, over to you.
Good morning. Thank you very much for that really kind introduction, Brigadier Peter, and the invitation to talk today to the Sapper Servicewomen's Network on International Women in Engineering Day. this year, the theme for International Women in Engineering Day is Shape the World, focusing on stories of how engineers shape the world and make our planet a better, safer, more innovative and exciting place to be. I think that being an engineer means that I am always on the lookout for ways in which we can improve the way in which we do things, starting from finding solutions to complex problems and then ensuring that those solutions are better for the environment around us, and so that our legacy is one of sustainable improvement. In my role as a director for AECOM, I am shaping the world in which we do business and the way in which we build our projects. And in one of my extracurricular roles with the Atrium Studio, I'm also shaping the future of engineering and construction. Our journey should be one that we are proud of and will inspire others to build a better world. So, over the next 20 minutes or so, I want to share with you my journey and how I have helped to shape the world around me, but also how the world around me has helped to shape the person that I am. I've always had a passion for engineering and building things from a really young age. This was probably fostered by my dad, as you can see here, a Royal Engineer, with whom I love to spend time with. I grew up on many military establishments around the world, surrounded by other dependent families, and grateful for the facilities that those barracks and my extended family there provided. I then attended a girls' boarding school in Kent to stabilise my education, and I excitedly looked forward to the bluey letters I received each week. My dad used to tell me about the projects that he was working on and try to explain the engineering issues he was facing, from obtaining engineering materials in hostile territories to logistics around getting a helicopter lift for a historic cannon to be moved across Gibraltar. I fondly remember the military fun days when I was at home for the holidays, where we would sit in tanks, play in helicopters, build bridges, and the army ethos of be the best was all around me. It filtered into my subconscious as I was desperate to join the Royal Engineers myself and follow in my dad's footsteps. Unfortunately, this dream was crushed when I sustained a back injury during my further education, and I was medically discharged from my university officer training corps. So I had to reassess my future and work out what I wanted to do with my life instead. I'd been accepted to Bristol University to study civil engineering in the late 90s, where the percentage of females on my course was around 13%. This was actually the highest percentage in the engineering faculty. However, it became apparent that I was in a minority. And having grown up surrounded by girls, it was a stark change. But I enjoyed working with others that shared my passions. When I originally asked my careers advisor at school about engineering, this wasn't an academic career that they had any experience of. And so I was left to do my own research. I discovered that my favourite subjects of maths, physics and design technology were all well suited to an engineering profession. With no other further information available, I chose civil engineering as I thought it would allow me to work both inside and out. I loved my degree and discovered a passion for concrete. And then the 4 years for my master's flew past, equipping me with the skills that I needed to become a real engineer. I think that the environment I was in at the time really shaped my thirst for a successful career with no limits because I was a girl. And this included the recent female Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, who had governed for 11 years. And to my school by Helen Sharman, the first British astronaut. And she was the first woman to visit the Mir space station in 1991. And also the Latham Report in 94 and the Egan Report in 98, titled Constructing the Team and Rethinking Construction, respectively, which both looked at a new era for the construction industry moving to a partnership relationship and away from the more traditional adversarial contracts. The promise for me that as a girl in this changing industry, which aspired to have no barriers, I could have everything that I wanted, both a career and a family. So, with a degree under my belt, I decided to try and maintain my desire to be involved in a military engineering environment. And I joined the Defence Engineering Science Group, or DESG, as a graduate on one of their training programmes as a civil servant. I was one of the first civil engineers to be accepted onto the programme, and at the time, Defence Estates was looking to grow their own professional expertise. I spent the next few years gaining experience across the MOD departments in 3-month placements. And this gave me a really great insight into how each of the different MOD departments and agencies operated. And it even included a 6-month tour at Chatham in 2002 with the Royal School of Military Engineering on the Professional Engineering Civils course with fellow Royal Engineers. I enjoyed my time at Chatham, living in and working with the Royal Engineers and learning more about military engineering. Thankfully, the week-long design exercises are now a distant memory. But I did take away further respect for the Corps, and I was honoured to be allowed to use the Garrison Church and the officers' mess at Chatham for my wedding later that year to my husband, a fellow Bristol engineering graduate. So moving on to one of the projects that I worked on as a graduate, which was the new air traffic control tower at the Royal Naval Air Station Yeovilton in Somerset. I was fortunate enough to work with the requirements management team, who understood the need for the new facility, as the existing one was full of asbestos, and they had to use CCTV to see the end of one of the runways. I helped to develop the requirement, ensuring that the placement of rooms and offices were maximised for the roles that they were needed to undertake. For example, ensuring that the toilet was located close to the visual control room to minimise time required for a comfort break, and to ensure that there was a full 360-degree vista from the control room to enable eyes on the various flights and operations, including the historic Harrier with its vertical takeoff and landing capability. At the time, there was another air traffic control tower being built at RAF Coningsby, and so I arranged for the design team to visit this facility to see if we could learn any lessons for our project. We learned invaluable advice regarding long lead items for bespoke military training operational kit, and some key insights into keeping the airfield operational during construction. I was then fortunate enough to be seconded to an engineering consultancy to design the foundations for the building. And then I transferred on site as resident engineer for the build. I was so excited to see a building that I had helped to design start to take shape and to help resolve construction issues that were apparent whilst working on a live military airfield. There were a few awkward occasions when, for example, I wore a skirt to the office for a meeting, but then was required to go on site and climb ladders to inspect some work, or trying to find PPE that fitted without looking too comically large on me, and also the time that a Harrier blew down the site Harris fencing whilst it was practicing its dance on Charlie Pad. But on the whole, I enjoyed spending time on site, talking with the trades and understanding how things were really put together. It turned theory into reality. I even convinced the head mason that he could teach me how to lay bricks, and the bricks that I laid are still visible today in the tower, although I'm sure that I was a very slow apprentice. So the Air Traffic Control Tower was a flagship project for the Royal Navy and was completed in 2006. And I have been fortunate enough to have revisited on a number of occasions in my later career when I led a design project for the full refurbishment of the airfield, taxiways and airfield ground lighting for RNAS Yeovilton. Upon meeting each senior air traffic controller for the airfield, I think I've now met 5 of them, I unashamedly asked them about what they thought of the building and if it met their requirement and supported them in the jobs that they do. And each time, the feedback has been positive. And I'm really surprised that this building, 15 years later, is still considered a state-of-the-art facility. And I'm reminded that as engineers, we have the power to shape the world around us for the better. Shortly after the completion of the Air Traffic Control Tower, I became a chartered engineer with the Institution of Civil Engineers, working as the youngest civil engineer for the MOD at the time. I then moved myself and my husband to Germany, to the Rheindalen headquarters as the Divisional Civil Engineer for Europe in a 5-year posting with Defence Estates, who then later became the Defence Infrastructure Organisation. I was responsible for asset management of the existing estate and introducing infrastructure estate management plans, together with condition surveys for some 50,000 assets across Europe. During this time, I also became a mother, and I had 2 children. I hadn't realised the impact that having a family would have on my life, and the decisions that I would have to make to maintain a career and a fulfilling home life. I started to slowly discover that to have it all, that sacrifices were needed in order to make it work. I suffered with postnatal depression, and part of that was probably attributed to being away from home in the UK. And the dependent extended family that I had known in my youth wasn't really extended to civil servants. So for me, it was really important that I return to work following my maternity leave to help with my mental health and to reconnect with others around me. Unfortunately, this was not the case, and I discovered that my line management at the time had other ideas. I was surprised to learn that they felt I should be at home with the kids rather than working. And so for the first time, I truly felt discriminated against because of my sex, and that was shortly after having my first child. I recognised that the environment I was in was not helping my mental recovery, and the outdated expectations were not something that I wanted to be a part of. So in 2011, we moved back to the UK, and I took voluntary redundancy from the civil service. I was really disappointed that my dreams of working with and supporting the military seemed to be over. But I also recognised that in order for me to be the best that I could be, I needed to make a change and work with a team who respected me and supported my decision to be a working mother. So we moved to the southwest of England, and I signed on for job seekers allowance. I didn't have a network in the UK to reach out to, but I researched the consultancy companies who had worked with the military, and I contacted them. I found a company called URS in Plymouth who were willing to give me a chance. I took a significant pay cut and a 0 hours contract and started as a senior project manager. I was an unknown entity, and although I was a chartered engineer, my experience had been client side rather than actually doing the work, and so it was a learning experience for both of us. However, I must have done something right as I quickly progressed, and my project management techniques ensured that I was able to transfer my skills, knowledge and experience for the defence sector into my new role, and I became a permanent part-time member of staff working 3 days a week. In 2016, URS merged with AECOM, and as 2 50,000 strong companies mixed, I was asked to take on the role of merging the project managers, building surveyors, and cost consultants within Plymouth into a coordinated team. Later in 2018, I then undertook the role of Framework Director for our UK contracts with the Defence Infrastructure Organisation. And since then, I've been working to provide a one AECOM approach for our defence clients to ensure consistency in our service, promote best practice, and drive innovation across our contracts. I have a passion for high quality work, and I expect the same from my teams. 4 years ago, I became a design quality indicator facilitator, which means that I can perform deep dives into projects throughout their life cycle and help stakeholders to quantify what is important for them in a project. This technique is really important as it allows a holistic measurement to be taken of a project based upon military standards when using the Design Excellence evaluation process known as DEEP. And I've seen the benefits of using this process on projects to improve stakeholder engagement and project outputs. It ensures that the projects we work on are faster, smarter, and better. At the same time as joining the consultancy, I also joined a network called the Southwest Women in Construction. And I started to meet other women who worked in the construction industry, from interior decorators to planners and architects, carpenters and electricians. I found the network showed me other projects in the region through CPD, and I also found others who were able to encourage me in my new role. It originally had felt quite alien as an ex-civil servant, where I had to be careful about my online profile, giving only limited information and making connections to putting myself front and centre, making connections which would support both myself and the company in the future. If I'm honest, I still get really nervous about networking events. But over the years, I've worked out some tools and techniques to help me get the best out of these occasions. And it's through these events that I initially became aware of the Atrium Studio. Over the last 7 years, I have had the privilege of being instrumental in the building of a new school in the Southwest, which is specifically for secondary students who would like to follow a career in the built environment. I had observed through the SWIC network and my managing role in Plymouth that it was difficult to recruit qualified staff in the Southwest, and the majority of our existing staff had a local connection to the region. So I decided that to preserve the company's future and our own engineering staff intake, we had to grow our own. As a voluntary member of the Atrium Industry Steering Group, then as a founding governor, I helped to develop a business case for the school, asked the Department of Education for the money, and then built a new school. And now as an occasional lecturer and mentor, I have hugely enjoyed seeing the students develop and grow within a school that is passionate about their future. All areas of the school are aimed at improving the students' knowledge of the built environment sector, from project-based learning to universal beam sizes printed on the steelwork, to fully integrated work experience placements within industry and a state-of-the-art BIM design studio. One of the key things the school does is educate the students on all the different types of career that are available within the built environment, and they made this video to show to others. The school and teaching staff and the students have all won awards, and consistently they have fantastic feedback from industry. I really love sharing the success of Atrium Studio with other construction professionals across the sector, so that similar schools might be built in the future. It's really exciting to see these students designing their own futures and shaping their world. It was partly due to my involvement with the Atrium Studio that prompted my award as the Best Women Consultant in 2018 with the European Women in Construction and Engineering Awards. As my role within AECOM has grown, and since the award in 2018, I have become more aware of the need to promote women engineers and to demonstrate that this is an awesome career choice. Where else can you engage with the client at the start of a project, develop their imagined solution, and then help to deliver it? I've benefited from the Southwest Women Construction and the Building Plymouth network, where I've met other people who are passionate about the built environment. We've worked together with adult mentoring sessions and STEM events, including the Giant Squid Project, which involved 1,200 primary and secondary school children at the National Marine Aquarium. All of these has helped to build my confidence, but it's also highlighted to me that engineering still isn't a first career choice for many females. and we need to continue to promote this engaging industry to ensure that we obtain the best talent. I strongly believe that in order for us to design the built environment and shape the world, that we need a representative workforce for the environment that we are designing for. Working in the defence sector and as an Armed Forces Covenant Gold supporter, AECOM get additional benefits from employing ex-military personnel as part of our design team. It helps to ensure that we speak the same language as our client, and hopefully they have confidence that we understand their requirement. The same goes for ensuring that we have a diverse workforce so that all clients, not just military, have confidence in us. And to make that diverse workforce work, as a company, inclusion is key, so that the team works together and harnesses the unique attributes that all members contribute with. Diversity isn't just about the underrepresentation of women in engineering. And I will continue to use the opportunities that being an award-winning engineer has given me to promote a diverse workplace to young students, fellow business colleagues and peers, and also to promote the Atrium Studio as a way in which construction and engineering can reignite a passion and diversity with the next generation so that they can design their futures and shape the world. So now I ask all of you, how can you be a role model to the next generation? I didn't set out to be a keynote speaker. I just wanted to do my best and ensure that the projects that I'm involved with are the best that they can be. However, I have learned that in order to support the next generation, we must all take a stand, become advocates for each other, and support everyone around us to be the best that they can be. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks for that, Emma. That was really enlightening for a lot of us. And it's prompted a couple of questions. So firstly, we've got one that asks, are there any particular improvements that you think still need to be made to ensure equality of opportunity for women in STEM careers?
I think the first bit is about ensuring that everyone is aware of the career that is available to you. So making sure that we all have those educational resources so that we know that it's even an option. I think still too often in schools, we find that STEM subjects aren't automatically offered to females. And I think that we really need to change that to help us to actually move forwards. I think once you actually get into the industry, the opportunity is all there. And I've very rarely found any stigma for being a woman whilst working in engineering, but it's actually making that first step and actually even knowing that it's a career choice that's available to you is the first step.
Brilliant. And then we've got another one here asking, what are the tools and techniques you've learnt regarding your networking?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's one of the things that I find a bit scary is networking. And I found that the best thing to do is to ensure that you know why you're at a networking event. So make sure that you've got a purpose for being there, not just to go and meet people, but why are you there to meet people? What is it that you need to get out of that event? And I find that by having a purpose at a networking event really helps you to be able to focus the questions that you're asking people and then to find that common ground as you're going forwards.
Brilliant. And then we've got another one here asking if you remember a specific light bulb moment where you found out you wanted to be an engineer, or if it's something that you always wanted to do. And the angle that this person asked from is there more that we can do to engage women in engineering if they don't receive that kind of encouragement from their home life?
Yeah, I was really fortunate that my home life really supported me in wanting to become an engineer. And I don't think my original career choice of wanting to do engineering was about being a civil engineer. It was because I wanted to be a Royal Engineer and I wanted to take any step that enabled me to have that type of career. And when that door was closed to me, I then rediscovered actually that civil engineering was really good. And I really enjoyed understanding how civil engineering can be applied to so many different areas. And that then enabled me my career to move forwards, not necessarily staying within civil engineering, but moving towards project management as well. But no, there wasn't a light bulb moment, I don't think. I think I've always been just really enjoyed building things. I think in that photograph I showed, I was only 3.
And then in moving away from being a specialist, how could a specialist look to branch into leadership roles if they're starting to make that transition?
I think this is a really important thing. And it's about having confidence in your ability and being competent in what you're doing. I think there's this age-old thing that if there is a new job, that typically females will need to feel that they can do at least 80% of those things before they will actually take the dive and put themselves forward. Whereas more typically, men may only need to have done 40% of those things before they feel that they are competent enough to go and do that job. And I think it's really important that we need to recognise that as women, sometimes we are more prone to imposter syndrome, which is what that process is. But I think I really take heart from a comment that someone made to me the other day, actually. I suffer from imposter syndrome myself, quite often going, why am I here? Why does anyone want to listen to what I've got to say? But actually, I was told that as a leader, I would much rather have people with imposter syndrome working with me than rather those people who don't understand the magnitude of the work that needs to be done and therefore go in gung-ho and don't really understand what they need to do.
And then we're also asked who some of your role models were in engineering and how they helped you to get to where you are.
I think this is a really interesting question because I've been thinking about my role models, and there aren't actually very many female role models in my life. I've had, when I was at university, my role model was Rowell, that key civil engineering icon, and the amazing things that he managed to achieve with his career in such a short amount of time, and the depth and breadth that he managed to do that. And then as my career moved forward, I was very fortunate to have some fantastic mentors who also became my role models as they helped my career to shape that forward, and they became real advocates for me. But they were all men. And I think that's a really important thing to note, that role models can be both female and male, but it is really important that we also have more female role models. And recently, I've been really glad that AECOM, chief of Middle East, India and Africa, EMEA, and actually shortly to become the president of AECOM, is Lara Poloni. And she's a really inspirational lady from Australia who's taken AECOM by its hand. And she's definitely a role model that I can now look up to in terms of my company progression as well.
Great. And then we've got 2 questions that I'm just going to put into one for you. And it's regarding schooling. So how can either those in engineering do more to educate teachers and gatekeepers about options open to engineers? And potentially, should we be looking at doing this at an earlier age?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I'm a STEM and construction ambassador as well. And there are so many things that we can do just by volunteering a little bit of our time to go in and speak to schools. So I've spoken at both primary schools and secondary schools, and you actually get the most impact at primary schools when talking about different careers and making children aware that maybe some of those stereotypical role models don't apply. And this applies for, women in the military as much as it occurs for women in engineering. And when you combine military female engineers, it then becomes a much smaller area that you're looking at, doesn't it? So I do think that getting involved, doing STEM activities with schools is really important. And having those discussions, you have to start local with the schools that are known to you, offering a little bit of your time, and then there are so many different networks out there to help you with specific materials that engage as well, and there's a number of them, so WISE, or some more local networks as well. And the Institution of Civil Engineers, for example, has got some fantastic resources that you can look at and use with schools as well.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got a slightly specific one here from someone who is seriously qualified as an engineer with a PhD degree in mechanical engineering and doing a postdoc research, and also a mum of 2. And her question is, could you share some advice on making that step into industry, as she seems to be finding it a little bit difficult?
I think it's about stepping from where you're a specialist and then stepping into industry. I think it's also about understanding your limitations and what it is that you want to offer and where you want to go in your career, and being quite firm in that as well. There's been many times that I've had to say no in my current career, and that doesn't actually sit very easily with me. I'm normally a can-do person. But I think when you are trying to balance a career and home life, it can be very difficult, and you do have to make priorities sometimes. And then specifically, it's about finding that area where you can add some value, and where your skills are appreciated. Because I find, wherever you work, it's always about that mutual trust that's needed.
Great, and I think that probably covers some of the information for another specific question that we've had about how, if someone's doing a PhD in civil engineering, what steps could they take in order to not fall behind in terms of career progression? So is that very much a similar answer?
Slightly. I think these days research areas have got, there's much better connection with industry, and so really use that network that you've got whilst doing your PhD, making sure that you have those industry advocates, and that will then help to make that step moving from research into a consultancy. You have to remember that most consultancies are trying to sell people something, and so ensuring that what your PhD, you need to understand the value of that and how you can then help a consultancy to use that so that they can then get more clients and they can then provide a better service to their clients. And it's how you market that, I suppose, market yourself to industry to ensure that you can add value to them.
So for now, Emma, thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
would now like to pass over to Major Vickie Warrington, who is the Sapper Servicewomen's Network co-chair.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Major Vickie Warrington, and I'm a serving officer within the Corps of Royal Engineers. I'm now entering my 19th year of regular service, having joined the cadets at 12 in my hometown of Barmouth in North Wales, and also having completed 3 very enjoyable years at the London University Officers Training Corps. I've completed 3 operational tours and deployed to in excess of 20 different countries throughout my service. I've worked in combat engineering, construction engineering, project management, and more recently in the training environment, all which I've absolutely loved. So having cantered through the first 20 years of my life, I found myself wanting to turn what had been nothing more than an after-school activity into my career. I joined at a time when Frank was the front face of the army. Now, there'll be lots of you out there who are way too young to know who Frank was. But at the time, Frank was the front face of the army recruiting campaign, and he can only be likened to an action man figure, regularly seen skiing down mountains, rafting through jungles, and conducting peace support operations worldwide. I wanted to be like Frank. So at the age of 16, my goal was to be like the guy I saw on telly. My school had only been co-ed for 2 years, and having girls in the cadets was simply not a thing. But the problem was I didn't want to be just like Frank. I wanted to be Frank, only better. So I promptly booked an appointment with my headmaster and told him exactly why I wanted to be in the Army Cadets. And I also asked him to explain why I shouldn't be. Clearly he couldn't. He let me join. And 4 years later, I was the first female Cadet Sergeant Major and also the first female Lord Lieutenant's Cadet for Gloucestershire. This was at 16, and at that stage in my life, being a girl never fazed me. And I can honestly say I've never really seen it as a blocker, and still don't. However, achievements to date have sometimes come with a challenge. Throughout my career, and I'm sure the same for you, I have sat through many inspirational speakers, and I've walked out of the conferences feeling 5 foot taller and feeling like I could conquer the world. But then you get back to your desk and reality kicks in, and you're occasionally left feeling she and he were absolutely fantastic, but I just don't think I could get there. So what I want to do today is just give you some of my thoughts on how you can achieve small steps towards success and gain attainable confidence. So I'm going to start with setting your own goals and what does your success look like. So I think this is so important regardless of gender. Someone once said to me that a goal without a plan is nothing more than a dream, and I do somewhat believe that. Find your purpose, find what your purpose is where you fit into your organisation. That may be at school, college, university, work, or even at home. Write it down somewhere. You're then halfway to committing yourself to achieving it. Then plan how you're going to achieve it. In the military environment, not everybody wants to be a future commanding officer or the next regimental sergeant major. Your goal may be to pass your next career course, not necessarily just pass it, and that is absolutely fine. You may want to achieve the next rank, pass the next set of exams, given that and these are all great goals. But something you must do is believe that you can achieve it. You must have faith and believe in yourself. This is where I come on to self-confidence. Self-confidence is something that some women lack or have lacked, and I totally understand it. The females on this conference call today in uniform that are part of the Corps of Royal Engineers, in my opinion, are part of a very special group of ladies. In a corps of nearly 10,000 serving personnel, there are 165 of us rank ranged from Sapper to full colonel. The majority of us joined the Corps when you could count the amount of females on your fingers and toes. We have spent our entire careers wanting to fit in, be part of the team, be included and seen as equal. We have spent the majority of our service comparing ourselves to our male counterparts, who perceptionally are bigger, stronger, faster, and simply better. I mean, let's face it, they can all lift a bridge single-handedly, right? Clearly that's not true. But that is our failing as women, in my opinion. It's not the men's fault. If and when we develop and unleash our own self-confidence and stop getting hung up on our own misconceptions, we too can demonstrate how incredibly talented we are. You only have to look at the recent promotion boards, operational successes, and daily sporting achievements to see this. We as females must not be intimidated. We must respect our own key skills and experience and not be afraid to show them off and shine. There's a study out there that suggests that if there are 10 criteria in order to class yourself as confident, men would be very content in saying that they were absolutely confident, having hit only 2 or 3 of the 10. However, women would need to hit 7 to 9 of the criteria to even consider themselves as being partially confident. So girls, I'm going to say it. It's okay to go out there and launch yourself at 60%, but you have to believe in yourselves. Have the self-confidence to step forward and be recognised for your strengths and to embrace your weaknesses. Seek help in these areas if that's what you want to do. Self-confidence will help in the stepping stones to success. Everyone has at least a little bit of fabulous in them. Break it out and shine. So, role models and mentors. I hope that everyone on this call can look back into their lives and pick out a few key people who have helped, advised, developed, and influenced your lives and helped you be the people that you are. That may start with parents, continue through key teachers, and then go on to employers. Through my life, I've been especially lucky, especially in my career, and I've had very special people who have influenced me. It is so important to have a role model, someone who you can look up to, take advice from, approach when you have a question, talk to when you've made a mistake, and most importantly, be corrected when you've got it wrong. A key point here, and something I do see a lot more in women than I do in men, is not to take things personally. Sometimes we do get it wrong and we need to be told, and that's absolutely fine because we can learn from it and we can be much stronger going forward. Never dwell on things, take the positives and simply move on. I then come on to bad role models, and I feel quite strongly about this. We've all worked for some of them, both male and female. I'm such a believer that sometimes you can learn more from these kinds of people. You learn the kinds of leaders, managers, and commanders that you don't want to be. how to teach people, how not to teach people, and most importantly, through thinking about how those bad role models have made you feel, how not to replicate their behaviour. And then there's you. Every single one of you can be a role model from where you are. That doesn't mean being the poster girl for female issues. That just means taking the time to invest in others, just taking a bit of your time to help someone else and develop them. If we want behaviours to change, it isn't necessarily our responsibility as women to change them, but we do play a massive part. Be a role model for your people. Trust your team. Let's just unpack that your people bit a little bit more. Who are they? Friends, family, university friends, sports teams, colleagues, your troop, your squadron, your regiment, it goes on. When you look at the people you have around you, embrace the talent that they have. Use it and recognise it so that your people feel valued. You may not know this yet, but they need you. You need them far more than they need you. In the military engineering environment, I am an officer and I'm in charge, fact. But put me in the middle of Basra and tell me to build a 400-man camp, or in Helmand with a small team and tell us to build a bomb-proof road that stretches the length of the green zone, I would have been lost without the talented people that I had around me. I may be in charge, but I'm absolutely not the expert. Never be afraid to ask for help. It is absolutely not a weakness. In fact, I'd argue it is a huge strength as you're recognising the value in your team. In my work environment, I will always be the boss, but I know very, very little about things such as concreting, albeit I will say I learnt more about it than I ever wished to know when I was in Iraq. But my soldiers, my subordinates are the experts, and they need to tell me what needs to be done. This does take trust. They need to trust me to lead them to success, and I need to trust them to give me what I need in order to get them there. I never really understood this concept fully until I hit subunit command. Trust means that you rely on someone else to do the right thing. It provides a sense of safety. When your team members feel safe with each other, they feel safe to open up, take appropriate risks, and expose vulnerabilities. I do believe this is a contributing factor to why females prove time and time again that they can get so much out of their teams. Once we can move past our own hang-ups and misconceptions of being viewed as weak, we are generally not afraid to ask, and more importantly, empower those within our teams. So what am I saying? Take time to get to know your teams. Listen to them. Know what's going on in their lives, what motivates them, what demotivates them. And what skill sets do they have? And once you know this, use it. They'll feel valued and you will start to see successes as a team. And that is an absolutely amazing feeling. They may even surprise you with some of the crazy skills that they've got up their sleeves. Leadership. Now there's so much leadership experience on this conference call and there are complete subject matter experts in it. I am not about to lecture anybody on leadership, but I think it would be remiss not to mention it. 2 years ago, I was asked to give an after-dinner speech, and it was on female leadership. I was fairly confident that I'd absolutely be able to nail it. After all, I was a female leader, and that is my trade. However, I found myself looking up books, researching the subject, I read papers, and I even went back through notes that I'd made at Sandhurst. And I came up with one simple conclusion. Leadership is just leadership, plain and simple. There is no such thing, in my opinion, as female leadership. All the theories and the philosophies are exactly the same, but what I would probably argue is that the application is somewhat different. Let's face it, men and women are different and we wouldn't want to change that. So let's look at the natural female traits and celebrate now how these make good leaders. Now on this bit, I'm going to massively generalise and I please ask you to forgive me for that. But I am going to say that generally it is perceived that women are more caring and have in some cases a more maternal instinct. Don't take that as a negative, it is a huge positive. It leans back to what I said about the fact you're more likely to know more about your team members. You will care about how they feel, and this leads to transformational leadership. Female leaders and managers aim to accomplish goals by transforming their teams into better people. They inspire. They take time to coach their teams and care about their personal development. They emphasize teamwork and communication as a key to success. Can anybody really say that this is a bad thing? Multitasking. How many of you, whilst you've been out there in lockdown, have achieved things that you just didn't think were possible? I certainly have. My life was packed to the absolute brim before we went into lockdown, but somehow over the last 13 weeks, as well as working full time, I've managed to manage a home, provide 3 square meals a day for a family, prep and clean up from those meals, as well as homeschool 2 children under 7. I think this is a skill set to be celebrated, and it certainly makes you employable. General Slim said the famous quote, "Leadership is just plain you." That is correct, but never make the mistake of thinking leadership is about you. As I've alluded to, women are very self-aware and will know immediately when things are not right in their teams. So have the courage to stop and assess the situation. And if you need to adjust your leadership style to get the best out of your team, your people, do it. This is not a failure, it's striving for success, which you will achieve. Humility is a characteristic of leadership, and when it's applied correctly, it is hugely powerful. Look on leadership as a trade. Many of you have worked hard in your trades to perfect it over the years, and you've done years of practice. Leadership is absolutely no different. There is a definite transition, as Emma alluded to, between being a specialist in a trade and a leader. But I'll say it again, take the leap, believe in yourself, and simply go for it. You can do it if you want to. By being a leader, you start on the ladder of being able to influence change. So my next point is about making the change. Throughout the organisation of this conference, I've been fairly adamant that I wanted it to be a positive celebration of women in both civil and military engineering, and I hope that we've achieved that today. But I feel I cannot ignore the elephant in the room. Being a female in a man's world for the majority of my career has been hard. Myself and RQ Reid are hugely conscious that the world of bum slapping, small-minded comments, and on several occasions discrimination was something that became the norm at the front end of our careers. Behaviours were bad, and highlighting them just did not seem to be a sensible option. I mean, who would have listened or cared, right? But we and many more senior females in the Corps now recognise that that was absolutely wrong, and we must do what we can so that the young females, soldiers and officers of the Corps don't experience what we did. So we all need to help make change, not just the women. We need to make change to the working environment to make it better for absolutely everyone. This is 100% not the women's responsibility to make these changes. This is down to a cultural change engendered by our chain of command, those people we put our trust into. However, we do play a massive part in that. We need to have the courage to speak out when we see something inappropriate, unkind, or just uncalled for. We need to make low-level changes, and I'll give you an example. If a man speaks in a firm voice, he is being assertive. If a woman does it, she is being bossy. Let's ban this kind of behavior, this kind of language. Communicate and educate people, that's male and females, from the pre-integrated generation. And what do I mean by that? Pre-integrated generation is the generation of people like myself and those before me who are used to coming through training regiments in single-sex platoons. They are used to single accommodation. They are used to being absolutely separated, male and female. That is not something that the youth of today is used to. So I'll say it again. Communicate and educate people from the pre-integrated generation and help them understand the integrated generation. Those of us from the pre-integrated generation, listen and don't be offended when a young whippersnapper has the confidence and humility to educate you. Take it on board, think about it, and maybe start a cultural change in your environment and with your people. If you can make one small change for good in your environment, I believe you have achieved success. And my final point is have fun. It's all too easy to get sucked into the complexities of life and the seriousness of every situation. Have fun setting goals, finding your self-confidence, having the courage to launch when you're 60% ready, finding and being a role model, building your team, learning from them and leading them. Get excited about making change no matter how big or small, and remember to laugh every day, especially at yourself, whilst you're out there shaping your world.